Hello, everyone. I'm your host today, Thomas Stoneham-Judge, leading conversation with the ForReel team on the latest movie releases. This week on ForReel, we're discussing The Fantastic Four: First Steps, and I'm confident this conversation will be, I'm gonna say it, fantastic. I've got Derrick Murray here, I've got Shawn here, and we've got special guest Matt Beck, and we've got a great show for you this week on ForReel. Gents, welcome to the conversation.
Hello, hello.
That was a great intro video. Got me jacked. I'm already jacked.
That was the goal. That's the goal. I think one of the consensuses on this movie is how great the score is. And I'm just like, yes, get that in the intro.
Yeah, Michael Giancarlo or whatever is whew, love it.
Yeah,
love it.
Just on point with that score. So we're at the end of the weekend. Fantastic Four came out this weekend, and I'm sure we all have thoughts. Derrick, I'm still working on our all my fans are movie friends. All my friends are movie fans.
All your fans are movie friends. Yeah.
We could just call it AMF, which is also Derrick's favorite alcoholic drink. Love them.
Yes, a double AMF.
Yes.
As a younger man, yes, it's true. I was a basic blue bitch. Yes, I was.
Hilarious.
It's funny. So yeah, guys, Fantastic Four is out. I think there's been a lot of talk about how fun this movie is, and how many people like it, but I get the feeling that there's also some diverse opinions in this room, and so I think we're gonna have a great conversation here. We did this on AMF, but I want to start with impressions on the original Fantastic Four. I think that's kind of the benchmark a lot of people had for what to expect with this one, and hopefully be better than those. But Shawn, let's start with you. What was your experience with the original Fantastic Four, or maybe the previous Fantastic Four movies?
For sure. So I did not grow up with the Fantastic Four movies, so I watched them no more than a decade ago, and they're fun. They're campy. They're fun. They're just not personally for me based on my personal preference, but I completely understand why people love those movies. They're, like I said, they're a lot of fun. Chris Evans especially, great comic relief. He's a very charismatic guy. You can see why he became Captain America. They're fun, and I think with what people's biggest complaints are nowadays with comic book movies, where they're so filler and they have to be a part of all these universes, having those two movies where they're their own thing, which I think is one of this movie's strongest suits, which we'll get into later. People love that about that movie, where they're just fun on their own and they're not connected to anything. They can just be their own thing. As for Fan4Stick from 2015, that movie, I don't know if we should even bother talking about that movie. It's an absolute abomination to not even comic book movies, just movies in general. It's just disgusting. It's interesting because a lot of people have been rewatching the Fantastic Four movies or watching them for the first time in anticipation for this movie. And people are like, yeah, the one from the 2000s is so much fun and it's campy and I like it. Nobody rewatching or watching the last Fantastic Four from 2015 has anything nice to say about it. It's so interesting how retrospective is so selective depending on the movie. Like, some movies do better over time based on growing audiences and people. Fan4Stick from 2015 is never going to get that. And I just think that's funny.
It is pretty funny. I said on AMF that I don't, if I saw Fan4Stick, I don't remember it and didn't bother rewatching it. So, Matt, what was your?
You are absolutely lying. You loved Michael B. Jordan. Okay,
Michael B. Jordan is awesome, but and that's the thing, is that like I love what he's doing with his career. I love his collaboration with Coogler. Like, I'm here for Michael B. Jordan. I'm not ready to ruin the mystique of his career yet. I don't want to have to deal with watching a bad movie from him right now. But Matt, what's your experience with the original Fantastic Four movies?
Yeah, it's kind of funny because a lot of people talk about the original like Fox movies or just the superhero movies from back then, and a lot of people are like, oh, you weren't there back then, so don't try to claim like you were. It's like, I think most people were back then, at least if you were of the age, that I was. Like we all watched the X-Men movies. We all watched the Fantastic Four movies. I specifically loved the Fantastic Four movies, the two originals. I thought the cast was okay. It really sucks kind of to, sometimes a little bit about what we do here and discussing this leads to like pulling back some of the veil. And the veil being pulled back on some of that movie, like the way they treated Jessica Alba during it, and like trying to get like more sexy scenes out, or she ended up like naked in front of people twice or whatever, and she's like, why is this always happening to me, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. So it sucks to pull back the veil because you didn't watch it that way. It was just the culture of that time. But now that you kind of look back on it, it's like we didn't need any of that stuff, especially if you were out there to watch a comic book movie, which the stuff from back then really wasn't. They weren't creating those movies to be like, hey, come watch a comic book movie. They were just saying, hey, come watch a movie about some comic book characters, but we're going to spice it up. We're going to make it be fun. But the Silver Surfer was like my favorite character of those two movies. It was really, I just thought it was cool. Like it was very like deep. It seemed like Silver Surfer's character was very deep, and I just really latched on to that a lot. And then a lot of people who, and I'm sure we'll get into this, trashed on this version of Johnny Storm, or Johnny Storm, and Chris Evans's version was much more similar to the comic book. But I still appreciated this version, even with a more campier version of Johnny from back then with Chris Evans was more comic book accurate. I still appreciated this cast, even though I know that some people crapped on it. I think, Derrick, I'm expecting you to be a little more critiqueful of this movie because you were very critiqueful or critical of the Superman movie. And I think there's some things in this new Fantastic Four movie to be critical of as a critic. And I'm gonna wait to hear if you take it there, my friend.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, don't worry, Matt. I will hold it down for myself and Scott. I got you.
Derrick says challenge accepted. Derrick,
just rename the hot take kid. I got this.
Yes, of course. Derrick, we actually heard your take on the previous Fantastic Four films on AMF. And so this is just going to be a shameless plug. If you want to hear what Derrick has to say about his experience with the Fantastic Four films, as well as mine, keep a lookout for our newest episode of AMF.
Is that all you have me on here for? Just so that you can promote the
shameless
others?
plug.
Like, I'm not actually going to share any of my thoughts. You all have to go to All My Friends Are Movie Fans whenever that releases to hear anything that I have to say. Got it. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, you're literally
I'm just going to go on mute
and
play Marvel Strike Force on my phone.
No, actually, so Matt ended his thoughts on a great segue into my next question, which is Fantastic Four does a very similar thing in terms of Superman, with Superman, in terms of like dropping everyone into the middle of the story. We don't need an origin story, so we're skipping that part. And it seems like there are some common, I guess, schools of thought that DC and Marvel are kind of sharing that are apparent here in Fantastic Four. Derrick, maybe you can, we'll actually get you to say something. Tell me about the similarities that you saw between this Fantastic Four film and the Superman film we just got a couple weeks ago. Some similarities and who maybe did those similarities better.
Yeah, I think a majority of those similarities really do come within those first 20 minutes and just kind of how they set up their hero. They both start 3 to 4 years after whatever the events are. We never really see those events. Most of them are recapped through kind of in-world exposition, not so much anything else outside of that. So there's a very similar thing like that. The way in which the heroes are revered and portrayed within the world are very, very similar. This idea that both Superman and the Fantastic Four have all but established themselves as being the gods of their cities or the gods of their worlds, right? Everybody reveres them. Everybody looks to them as the protector, and they look to them as problem solvers. There's also a sense of like found family. There's a sense of self-reflective discovery. They are accepted, and then they are not accepted by making decisions. that feel unilateral, and their climaxes are pretty much the same about sacrifice. So these movies share a lot of bones. And it's funny because I know Matt is very much looking forward to my comments on Fantastic Four. And as similar as these movies are, and I do think they're very similar. I think they share a lot of their kind of thematically, they feel very similar, and in the way that they kind of operate. I actually think Superman is a better constructed movie. And I actually think Superman.
Thank you for saying I was waiting for you. I didn't have to wait very long. Our viewers don't have to wait very long. With this crazy,
if you want to hear more, you're gonna have to check out the All My Friends Are Movie Fans episode.
Moving on from Derrick. Moving on from Derrick now. Yep, go back.
It's strange to say because I actually think that Superman is almost the messier movie, but I think as I've left the theater, and we talked a little bit about this on All My Friends Are Movie Fans, but I'll kind of expand on it a little bit. It's just when I left the theater for both films, I was really, really positive on them. And then, as I obviously have to do because this is part of my job, I got to put the critical hat on, and even things that I love, like even 5-star bangers aren't perfect for me, right? So I always have to highlight those things regardless of my enjoyment of them. And what I've found over the last couple of days is my instinct to want to rewatch Superman is stronger than my instinct and desire to want to rewatch Fantastic Four. So even though they actually share a lot of the same messages, they share a lot of the same messaging, they share a lot of the same thematic structure, even their third act structures, all of those things are virtually identical. But I just find myself gravitating when I sit down and think about so my girlfriend's never going to go to the theater to watch either one of these. So when they eventually come to streaming, the one that I'm going to recommend we watch first and the most is probably Superman. And we'll get into kind of where those things fall. But the last thing I'll say is I'm actually of the school of thought, though, that the way these two movies begin is the right choice. I like bypassing the origin stories. I think that's part of the biggest issue with the old ones is that they spend even in the sequel, right? Even in the sequel, they actually just spend most of the time doing an origin story, and they all have to relearn their powers, even though they have them. And then you get 20 minutes of a villain, and then the movie's over. So even though they are a lot of fun, we spend way too much time trying to develop characters that are essentially already established. That's the biggest issue with Fanforstic, where 95% of that movie, aside from it just being aggressively repulsive to look at, 95% of that movie is literally just watching them in a training montage. And then you have a villain that shows up for 2.5 seconds, the climax is over, and then they're like, oh, what should we call ourselves? That's the whole movie. So I like that they don't do this. And I think that's the smart choice. And I think when we talk about first steps, that is the first step in the right direction. So
if you didn't know that Matt is in Seattle, that Starbucks cup at 4:00 in the afternoon on a Sunday gives it away.
Yes. Shawn looked like he was injured by listening to what Derrick had to say there. I kept looking over at Shawn. I was like, I don't know if Shawn's actually upset or is that just the way he looks. Shawn is
talking about Fanforstic, and I was God damn it.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
You have no idea how lucky you are that you have no, even if you have seen it, you have no memory of it. I'm telling you, we're God, that movie,
I literally said the name and I sent Shawn into a PTSD episode. That is how bad that movie is, Thomas.
I am happy I don't
Shawn at all. I love Shawn with my whole heart. So I apologize, bro.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I feel very attacked by you, Thomas, because nobody out there knows it's 4:00 in the afternoon. Okay.
You know what? The only reason I did that was because someone else on this podcast called me out for having whiskey at 10 a.m.
he just had to get one back on.
Which, funnily enough, if you want to watch that, it is an All My Friends Are Movie Fans episode, so you can.
Yes, it is.
You miss all this fun if you don't.
This
Continue.
is
Sorry.
look at the ForReel cinematic universe,
You
the
like
real
that? You like
podcasting
that?
universe
Just
here.
dropping Easter eggs this whole
Right.
episode.
Yeah.
Matt, let's get your thoughts on the compare contrast to Superman.
Uniquely enough, I had talked about this in AMF, how I thought that both movies were going to be the same, almost like a city destruction movie, which I was so pleasantly thrilled with. What's kind of funny coming on here right now? I was literally ready to do exactly what we're doing here because I knew if you were going to do the right thing, Derrick, and be critical of this movie, not that I second guessed you, but I was just thinking in the back of my head, okay, if he thinks that this movie is better than Superman, you have no credibility in my mind because you know what I mean? That's what and Derrick, you flew with flying colors because there is critical points.
I passed the Matt test.
Critical points of this Fantastic Four movie that as a critic, you absolutely cannot overlook. But as a movie, you could get out as a fan, which I am, and that's the take I bring. You could get out of this Fantastic Four movie and be like, that was better than Superman. You could. I mean, if you're a fan. I don't think it was, but I before the movies happened, and like I said, I thought it was going to be two city destruction movies. I was so pleasantly surprised once the movie started going in. I was like, wow, Marvel there's two things I want to say about this. Marvel has done really well in swerving the entire population on this movie. You imagine that the Galactus was going to come in, it was going to eat the universe or eat the Earth, and that Fantastic Four is going to escape out of there reluctantly and leave their planet to die, right? And you thought the whole movie was going to be Galactus coming to Earth, destroying the whole thing, and they were going to fight. Dude, the fight on Earth was only a very small percentage of this movie, and at the very end, all of a sudden, they escape. They bring the fight to Galactus. I thought, whoa, what a great swerve. I was expecting to see just the same movie as Superman. It didn't happen for me. And for that reason right there, I started to lean so much harder towards this movie as far as my personal love of either or. To compare them both, I don't know that there's much comparisons to both. I mean, I get the concept that you're comparing, that they know that the Fantastic Four is their saviors, but in Superman, like we mentioned before, it's Superman and friends. So there's lots of others in this universe. It seems as though there are no other metahumans or mutants, or at least maybe we're early enough in the timeline that we haven't discovered them, or they haven't been able to come out. Maybe the Fantastic Four are the first steps to the world revealing their mutantness or wherever. And so I felt like this movie from Marvel, they knew had to be good, and they made every good decision along the way to differentiate themselves from what they knew Superman was going to be, because I felt like everybody knew exactly what they were going to get from Superman. Me and you sat next to each other, Thomas. We sat when we watched it, I don't know that anything surprised me. Nothing about this movie surprised me. It's just good. It was just a good movie. They surprised us a little bit, Marvel did here. I got some more things to say about that, but that was your question. I'd like to move on to see what Shawn says.
Yeah, we're going to, the story, I think, is going to be the next topic we get on. And so I think there's going to be a lot of conversation happening there, because I had some thoughts on the story. And you pinged on some of those things. But Shawn, let's get your take on compare contrast to Superman.
Yeah, going off of what you guys said, I do agree that it was a great decision to not have these origin stories play out the first 30 minutes of the movie. I think it's just very convenient that these two properties have had multiple origin stories in the past, and they were both smart to be like, we don't need to do this again. The audience, yes, there are people that have not seen those movies, but you guys get, like, we get the idea. I am very happy that Marvel went the cosmic route. When the movie really started picking up, I loved the first big action sequence after they meet Galactus for the first time. They're like escaping. The way the movie looked, I thought that was great. And then it's interesting because that's my least favorite part of Superman, the second act where they're in the sorry, please correct me on what the name of is it the negative
Just call it the Minecraft River. That's
The
Minecraft River.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's the Minecraft River. Just call it what it is, Shawn.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, because that was my least favorite part of Superman, but I really enjoyed the everything about the picking up of the first act going to the second act, and how everything looked and where the movie was going with that. In terms of other
I might pick up real quick here because we're talking about similarities. I've just kind of popped in my head is there are some CGI similarities or scale similarities. Like right when Silver Surfer came to Earth, all of a sudden you had that zoomed out image and you saw like almost like the flames of Silver Surfer kind of, or destruction of Silver Surfer coming down, and you got that scale that, you're on Earth but you're looking into the sky. There's so many different ways you could have shot that, but I felt like, and I mentioned this to you, Thomas, that Superman also had a very great scale. Like as far as both movies, I felt that I was a person on Earth getting a chance to watch this play out, instead of feeling how sometimes a comic book movie can put you too close to the characters, and then all of a sudden it feels like you're just watching a movie instead of watching it unfold in front of you. There was a couple times in the movie, in both movies, that I felt like I was really in the environment based on the scale. So I think they got that right similarly.
The thing I'm going to contribute to this part of the conversation, I was just thinking about this because it was a big problem that I had with the ending of Fantastic Four. And I think something that I found similar in both movies is that I don't think the stakes were very high in either one of them. I think that both movies have scale. They do. They're big, they're grand. There's lots of action, at least in the climax for both of them. And I think they have the illusion of stakes. And by the way, for anyone who isn't sure yet, this is a spoiler episode, so we're going to talk about Fantastic Four. So if you haven't seen it yet, make sure you've seen that, and I guess Superman as well. Since
if you haven't seen it yet and you're watching this, are you serious?
go see Fantastic Four. But I think that there was never a point where I was like, oh, something permanent's going to happen here. And this was one of my big problems with Superman. They were splitting the Earth in half with a pocket universe, is what it's called. Shawn, I had to Google it.
Well, but he was talking about the river inside the pocket universe.
Yeah, the
which is called the
negative, right?
The negative something.
Okay. But you're splitting the world in half with a pocket universe and a black hole, and I just never thought, oh yeah, this is good. There are going to be permanent consequences here in Superman. No, in fact, they just zipped that bitch right back up.
Literally, yeah.
Right.
Thomas, do you remember after Eternals when that thing whatever the god was, and then people were like, oh my god, it's gonna have such lasting effects on the MCU, and then for 3 years we heard nothing, and then Captain America comes on, they're like, oh yeah, by the way, this is here, and they barely reference it at all. Like, that's the kind of stuff that annoys audiences, and it's completely valid. And I understand it's a lot of stuff to keep track of and everything, and like studios are scared audiences won't remember, and audiences are scared studios won't bring them back up, but like, it's something to think about.
Yeah.
Thomas, can I ask you a question real quick though? Do you imagine that you might feel the way you feel about the impending doom or anything? Because we all are not children anymore, and grasp the concept that every superhero movie, superheroes win. Like, the bad guys always they never win, so yeah, I get the concept that Thanos provided us a little bit of that impending doom. Well, yeah, that was also after years and years of movies and storytelling where the bad guy won every single time. Like, so yeah, I mean, we're just back onto comic book rhetoric at this point.
Well, I'm going to exclude Infinity War and Endgame from this conversation because those movies are just the pinnacle of superhero, storytelling and finales. I don't expect Endgame for every movie. I just can't, because the thing with Endgame is, even though the heroes win, there's still a sacrifice that has to be made, and that's
and people
supposed to be the permanent consequence. Obviously Robert Downey Jr. is coming back, but I think that
Yeah, but
there's
he's
a
not
couple-
coming back in the same universe.
Right.
though.
He's not coming back in the same universe. It's a different thing. I get that. And I still very much keep the Infinity Saga as its own thing. Everything after the Infinity Saga is just a mess.
I feel like people are worried about that. Are you guys actually worried about that a little bit?
About what?
Sounds
What's
like
that?
you are, Thomas. Like that
the
Iron Man
Avengers
didn't
Doomsday?
die.
Yeah,
No,
no, he's already said he's going to face off against himself. So we're going to get more than one Robert Downey Jr. So there is no permanence in, which is how comic books operate, and I'm fine with
That's
that. I one thing I will push back on a little bit, and I think this kind of goes to your point, is I do agree that both movies give an illusion of stakes, where I think Superman succeeds a little bit more in those illusions is we're never worried about Superman like actually losing, right? That's just not how that works.
Right.
And that's fine. We know that going in. But I think there is a little bit more, and we can get into this as we kind of transition into story and characters, but I think there's a little bit more growth for the character of Superman and the world that Superman is surrounded by that allows those stakes to feel a little bit more effective versus something like Fantastic Four. And I have my own issues with how that kind of functions. And I think some of that we talked a little bit about it. We'll talk about it with the story, not to jump ahead too far, but I don't feel the same character growth, even though they have their moments of like faux sacrifice and, you know, coming together as a family. But those are things that already exist within these characters, and none of them really, they're all basically the same as when they started. And so those illusions of stakes are a little bit easier to see through in Fantastic Four than they are in Superman, because Superman has a little bit of naivety and arrogance in the things that he's doing when he starts.
Adolescent.
And you feel him, even though he's still basically doing the same things, you do feel a sense of growth when it comes to how Superman ends the film. So regardless of whether or not the bad guys win, that's irrelevant. You just need to know that somebody grew up, right? Somebody had some growth. And I don't really feel that with Fantastic Four. So even though their illusions are the same, I think Superman gets more of it right than the Fantastic Four does.
I think you make a valid point. That was one thing I was going to say, is that if you're not going to have permanent consequences, I think there's something needs to be permanent, and character development is the other permanent thing I look for. Like, how much does this character grow? How much different are they at the end of the movie from the beginning of the movie? And I think you're spot on, Derrick. Superman has more growth than any of the Fantastic Four characters, which is so frustrating because there is so much growth to be had among the Fantastic Four characters. And
not to mention, they're about to reboot it. So they could have gone down a path here and very quickly retcon themselves with the reboot.
Right. And
so and maybe I'll start by going into the story, and I don't mean
go
to
for it, Matt.
But like, spoiler warning, right? Sue Storm should have died.
Absolutely.
Like, this movie would have been phenomenal had she died at the end. Boom, there's your
present in Doomsday.
I get it. They could have still even retconned it from there, even so. So that was it. It had Sue Storm died, this movie would have elevated so much more for me. And the end would have mattered.
I'll give you another one. And this, Thomas and I talked about this after he saw the movie. I'll give you another one. Let's say that doesn't happen, but let's say instead of Silver Surfer saving Johnny Storm actually sacrifices himself and gets pushed through the black hole. And then instead of the absolute worst mid-credit scene I've ever seen in my life, the actual mid-credit scene is Johnny floating in space, and the Silver Surfer shows up and starts to carry him back to Earth. That's a way to have permanent stakes, have a legitimate sacrifice, and retcon it in a way that actually demonstrates some growth for multiple characters.
Yeah, absolutely. And they told you, basically told you throughout the entire movie that they're not killing off Galactus. They're sending him a million light years away. So at least we'll never be around by the time he's back. So yeah,
so the plot points are the
absolutely a way
same. We're just moving them around slightly, and so that they have a little bit more of an effect. Yeah.
Can I ask you this, Derrick and Shawn, because you both, I mean, I know Thomas, you're a critic too, but just the concept is, and a lot of people are talking about this right now. One of the most screened movies in Marvel history. Can you guys agree, being critical, that there was so much cut out of this film, and you could tell at very specific points that, oh, there must have been way more to this, and I feel
I'm just going to say this and then I'm going to shut up because I want Shawn and Thomas and everybody else to talk. But like, Matt, the fact that a super fan can pick up on something like that shows you how much this movie needed those extra minutes. Because that's my biggest issue with this film is everything that matters and everything that is the most interesting feels like it's put on fast forward. It all feels like every time they go to kind of pretend they're going to develop a character, you can tell they just chopped out whole sequences to just be like, yeah, but they're going to get bored. So we gotta get to the black hole. We got to get to the city destruction. And it's like, guys, pump the brakes, put that 25, 30 minutes back in and give us more of these characters for the love of God. So yes, I agree, but I'm going to let everybody else expand on it. I'm literally going to put myself on mute.
Can I ask Shawn?
Yeah.
Why was it cut?
Sorry, Shawn does not get paid enough.
Because we know it got
what the Marvel Studios is doing here.
I'd love to know why.
I feel like Marvel, I wish I was in Marvel's head so I could understand their train of thoughts, but I don't know if they're just scared of the audience not trusting them. They know how rocky everything has been lately, and they're like, we really don't want to mess this up, so let's just play it as safe as possible. So people are mad that some stuff is removed. At least they're not mad about the stuff that is included in the movie. It's a very interesting question, and there's no definitive answer, unfortunately. But I feel like they just wanted to play it safe, and they just wanted people to be feel adequate with what they got rather than feel like what they got wasn't enough or not good. I feel like that's the best way I can put it. I don't know.
I find it so interesting because the director of this movie also did WandaVision. And for me, the best parts of WandaVision were outside of the action. Those first 6 episodes where it's just riffing on sitcoms, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. But even in WandaVision, you get to that 6th episode and you see the cold feet on Marvel. Like, oh my gosh, we have to retcon Quicksilver. Like, we're not sure if we're ready for that yet. Oh my gosh, we need to throw more action in here because people are going to get bored with this. And it's so unfortunate that it's the same trend here in Fantastic Four is, we have these really interesting characters with this great dynamic. It's slightly different than the original Fantastic Four. You have some mild changes to really embrace the that family aspect of the film, and then just cannot commit to it. I mean, it took me a long time to figure out like exactly how much are we playing into the ladies man thing with Johnny Storm here, and I still don't actually know. I think he's very Chris Evans gives a very Johnny Bravo kind of performance there,
and that's the comic book accurate version,
right? And that's fine, right?
And I'm fine with this version as we kind of compare it. I think Shawn, you actually touched on it a little bit, and I think you're right to say that there is a sense that Marvel doesn't necessarily trust their audiences, and you see it in WandaVision too, and you feel the creatives trying to be risky and trying to take risks and move things forward. And as they start to take their steps outside of the line, you see those big old Marvel cog Disney corporate guys just reach around and like rip them back to play it within the boundaries, right? And I think that's where this film really struggles. It is a tale of two films where you have all the groundwork for this risk and really just diving into a family drama that might have a little bit of action, which to me, that's taking some big, bold swings and just really relying on the strength of your characters. but you also have this MCU machine just hiding behind it that's like, guys, the audience will not be okay with sitting with these characters, so we got to splice it up, we got to cut all this stuff out, and we got to get to the city destruction as fast as possible. And that's where I think this movie loses a lot. To the point of Johnny Storm, I actually think Joseph Quinn does a pretty good job. I think he's a little bit in a different movie, but he does a good job as a slightly different Johnny Storm. And I think some of the things that he is trying to go through, I feel like they're right on the cusp of being a great character, but they just all feel a little underdeveloped. They don't really lean into the fact that Johnny's real issue is he doesn't feel like he has a place on the team. He doesn't feel like anything that he can do is actually contributing to it. And all he wants to do is get back up into space. And then you have this great dynamic where you've got Reed Richards, who is just racked with guilt, right? And that's where Pedro Pascal is actually his best, is when he's really trying to deal with that. So he's racked with guilt as being the smartest man in the universe and not being able to solve this problem that got them all of these powers. So every time Johnny brings it up that he wants to go back into space, it's not because Reed Richards doesn't have the time or the ability or the smarts to do it. He is literally terrified of something he doesn't understand and something he doesn't know. Now, that's only slightly conveyed, and they don't fully go into that. And then when you get this relationship between Shia LaBeouf and Johnny Storm, it feels like there was more there. Like, it feels like there's a good 5 to 10 minutes of that relationship and Johnny's displacement that we just don't see. And it's because they know that it's going to take too much time. So we just got to blow something up because the audience is going to get bored. And I'm of the belief that if you would have just slowed down and gave us that stuff that you feel is missing, that you'd have just given that, if you would have just given that back, this movie would have been infinitely better, honestly.
Well, and they would have had to have done it in a way that they gave Silver Surfer singularly a little bit more time, and then they had to then Ben Grimm a little bit more time. And I bet you by the time it started to add up, it's like, geez, we're at 2 hours and 30 minutes here because these characters are given a little bit more time. And it's like, can we cut this and still make the film okay? And it's like, well, yeah. And they did, clearly, but it also sacrificed the end of the movie in doing so, because you didn't have the material stakes for the self-sacrifice and for Silver Surfer to save the day at the end. You didn't get enough of Silver Surfer's arc throughout the entire movie that would say, I'm all of a sudden going to turn on my ancient guy that I've been with for so long. And it's like, oh, only because we got to these characters did I change my mind. Like, really? Like, you've been doing this forever. We've been killing a lot of people. Like, why all of a sudden, like, tell me why, or give me more of this development. And so that's what killed the ending of the movie.
I'm gonna take this on a detour really quick, because I've said before, I think this should have been a family drama. I actually kind of hate that this is an action film, because the most interesting parts of this movie are just the family dynamic here between these 4 characters. In fact, what's funny, Derrick, when we ended AMF, I was looking at your background and entirely forgot that robot was there. I entirely forgot that the robot was in this movie. Like, that is a character.
Herbie disrespect.
I'm sorry.
Incredibly disrespectful.
I'm sorry. Like, it just didn't have a whole lot to do, which is just another thing that's like, that didn't have enough time. And so I'm thinking about, like, I would have preferred if this was a family drama. And so my question here is about genre and the superhero genre versus think genres in the superhero world, like where superheroes, it's a family drama where people happen to be superheroes. Do we think that could work in Marvel storytelling? Is that something that is possible? As we kind of look at what reinventing Marvel might look like. Shawn, what's your thoughts here?
That's a great question. And I think the problem is that I don't think Marvel can, because they themselves have set up these expectations for audiences where these are the kind of movies that you're going to get. And these are the ones that make all the money. And when they're not that, people don't go see it. It was too late to change anything after Thunderbolts came out, but Thunderbolts is the closest thing we've gotten to a family movie in the MCU. And it did not make a lot of money. Now, there's a lot of outside factors, and it's not because the movie was bad or people didn't like it, but I'm scared Marvel looks at that and is like, well, maybe if there was more action in it, maybe like I don't know what it is, but I don't see Marvel, especially after Fantastic Four came out, and people are talking about stuff where it's not as family oriented as they would have liked it to be. If we're gonna get that. And that sucks because they've built a roster of characters that have become a family without them even really making that their main objective. It just happened because these characters and these actors worked so well together. The Avengers became a family, and that's why people cared so much about them. People kept going back to see them, and why Infinity War and Endgame was so impactful, because it wasn't just these characters dying or getting dusted away. It was seeing these characters lose their loved ones. Even if they were in 1 or 2 movies before, people were crying at Spider-Man being dusted away, but also Tony Stark's reaction, because he was a son to him. And it's stuff like that where they're not family, but you feel that because they just had such a natural and organic way of building up this universe. And if they just let that happen again and embrace it, we could have something similar to that. But this multiverse saga is all over the place, and you don't care about these characters the way that you did in the Infinity Saga. Shang-Chi is going to be in Doomsday. We have not seen him in 4 years, and it's going to be 5 years 5.5 years by the time Doomsday comes out. Doctor Strange hasn't been around in 3 years. Has he interacted with any characters that he's going to be interacting with in Doomsday? No, so why should we care? It's very frustrating because they've done it. So I don't know what they're going to do going into Doomsday, because we're in phase 6. We're 1 movie away from Doomsday if Spider-Man doesn't get delayed. And we are nowhere near where we should be compared to where we were at this time in the Infinity Saga.
Oh
yes. Do you know why, though? I just want to talk about this on the fan side. Feige said that they have just started a 7-year arc. So the reason why I think...
Please do not walk out on a stage and show us 7 years of movies again. I don't give a fuck.
No,
none of that is going to be accurate. None of it's going to be accurate in 90 days.
Okay, maybe, but the concept is why you may be feeling that way is because we are building up Secret Wars and Doomsday to this Thanos level thing when it's probably not going to be. It's more going to suffice the reset and move into the X-Men stuff. I don't know that it's going to be this Thanos thing. And I think everybody is trying to put that on its shoulders when Marvel knows that's not what it is. I'm interested to find out how much of the story has been rewritten, just knowing that I think that they're bagging out on this. I think at this point, they're like, hey, we're going to throw Robert Downey Jr. in here. I think we're going to slim it down a lot and then just be happy to move forward with the X-Men characters and then maybe find a way to bring Doom back in with that or Fantastic Four back in with that.
Reeks of desperation, by the way.
Well,
it really does.
It does.
It is palpable.
Fired Michael Waldron. Didn't they just bring him back after they let him go for Doomsday or Kang Dynasty, and they brought him back for Doomsday? Am I right about that?
So. I think
Wait,
you are.
What is going on? You're still writing the movie. You're in development. You're a year and a half away from release. What are we doing, guys?
Well, they were forced to do that with Kang, with the removal of Kang. They were forced to. So no matter what we're getting from them right now, there's no way it's not still being reshuffled. There's just no way.
I want to answer Thomas's question directly too, because I think
so. If you want to hear Derrick's opinion, you can go.
Way to bring it back.
Oh, it was a great callback. Well done. Yeah. So, and Shawn touched on it a little bit because he did mention that one of the frustrations with everything that has kind of come out post Endgame, mostly, is that we know what they're capable of, and they're just not doing it. And I don't know if it's a skill or a will issue, but they're just not doing it. So, to your point of it wanting to be a family drama. And can they do genre? Well, they absolutely can, because most of what we got before Infinity War were all genre films. Like Ant-Man is a heist movie. Captain America, the Winter Soldier is a political thriller. Captain America is a period piece. Thor is a fish out of water story. Iron Man is a hero's journey story. Like they are more. Guardians of the Galaxy is a friggin' Seven Samurai movie. Like they are more than capable of operating within very specific genres and then adding a superhero layer on top of that. They just haven't done that in a very, very long time. And I actually think that's why Thunderbolts has been more successful when it not necessarily box office wise, but just overall in the way that people have kind of gravitated towards it, because it does feel something. It does feel singular in the way that it operates and how it feels like a combination of a political thriller mixed with a Seven Samurai Misfits heroes, right? And that's honestly, I just rewatched Thunderbolts yesterday. Holds up better than I thought it would. Actually, I was high on it, but then I kind of got a little mid, and like I rewatched it and I was like, yeah, dude, this Florence Pugh is holding this shit down. Like I still got some issues with it, but it is highly rewatchable. But it's because they are doing a genre here, and all of the genre stuff that they do, they actually do really well. And I would actually go as far as to say that those are the filmmakers that they bring on that they used to let just make the movie. And now they don't do that. They give them these parameters. They give them the sandbox to play in. And if they go outside of those boundaries, the MCU is a corporate mechanism machine now. And there is nothing they can do to stop that. It is a world that they have created, and it is a villain of their own making. And it doesn't matter what direction they try to go in, whether they try to take bold steps, they're always going to get brought back into this very, very specific sandbox. And they're hamstrung because of it. And it holds them back from doing the things that they used to do well. They used to just let Kenneth Branagh make a Thor movie, which, regardless of your mileage may vary on how well that is an insane sentence to say out loud. And they still just let him do it. They just let him make his own movie and just do it the way that a Shakespearean director-performer would make a Thor movie. Like, that's insane, but they used to do it, and it used to be successful. And now they don't do that. They get seat warmers. They tell them, hey, this is the movie that you have to make. You can do some of this, but you can't do all of it. Because
and then they might change it. They might change it in post anyway, even if you try to, do some of that. And then to button what you're saying there is they decided, and this is not a Marvel thing specifically, but it's really a Disney thing collectively. They decided that they are going to be the front runners of a very specific culture where I think maybe due to some events in the world right now, that culture is starting to take a back seat a little bit, as far as, Disney doing that now is almost becoming martyrs for it now. And it's just like this girl boss stuff and this post-production editing stuff. Like, you can tell where they're trying to send all of this stuff. And it's starting to now be the reason you're fatiguing on their product, because you could tell that those narratives are starting to be flown in here. And you can see that, to go back to the original thing I said before we move on, because I want to talk about some good and some bad of this movie, but you can see that they wanted to make a different movie, or at least maybe there's a lot more film that got left on the editing floor that did have your family, period piece or genre that you're speaking of, and then it just got cut out. And I think it was more to the response that Marvel is up against the wall here. They absolutely are. And yes, Thunderbolts worked, but it was also a very unique thing where it did kind of delve so much into that culture with mental health and stuff like that. So like the movie was just good as well. And it hadn't been good for so long. So it's just like, okay, we're here. Now we need to screen test Fantastic Four to see if maybe that was a one-off and maybe we just got lucky with this and this story just happened to work. Well, they found out people didn't like this movie in those 3 months ago test screenings. There was too much girl boss stuff. Stuff started coming out that Sue Storm was going to be the leader of this Fantastic Four, and they went right to edit and they cut a lot of this stuff out to kind of retool the movie to not make Pedro Pascal look so soft, because he was soft the whole way. I agree with what you're saying. Well, in the
He's a,
comics,
he's
though,
a nerd that
leader.
bagged a baddie. Like, of course he's soft.
Yes, but in the comics, he's a leader. He's a leader, and in this
Mhm.
movie, you get a very different vibe of him. He is
Oh, man.
burdened the entire film.
Well, it's so interesting because that is very apparent, but not explored nearly to the depth that I wanted it to be.
Oh yeah.
I really wanted him to have a moral dilemma. And, using the baby as bait is, the hardest moral dilemma that you could come up with. Like, there is so much more you could do, because I think, oh man, this really actually it improves my perspective on Sue as the character here, because she is the only one I think who is like the most fleshed out here. She has her objective, which is her kid, and that is, motherhood.
Thomas, this makes sense. I'm sorry this is what I'm talking about. It was clearly a girl boss movie.
Well,
that's why Vanessa Kirby's character has so much fleshed out character, because they cut most of the stuff out to make you not believe that, but they still had to leave in the majority of the movie where this is Sue Storm's movie. Continue.
Which is, yeah, it is. I mean, I think that's a great way of putting it. This is definitely, I don't see Sue Storm as the leader of this group. If that's what happened in Edit, where they had to cut back, her leadership role.
That's what happened in Edit.
I can believe that she doesn't feel like the leader of this group, but I do think she feels like the strongest character of this group. And I'm not opposed to that. I just, moral dilemma in storytelling, like there's so much that's like rich in there, and Reed Richards was just like just
burdened the entire film.
He was, and it wasn't explored. It's like, I want to be burdened with you, dude, but like I'm not getting it yet. I'm not.
Tell me why. At least give me that.
Yeah, at least give me why. And it was kind of like I talked about, right? Like he's clearly at a moment where he has failed, and Reed Richards doesn't fail, right? Like the math always maths for Reed Richards, and it didn't this time. And now, not only did he mess up 4 years ago, and sure, they got powers and they're all excited about it, but like he's burdened by that.
But we don't know why.
And we don't know why.
We don't know why.
For him, this is a failure. The fact that they came back and he wasn't able to calculate the anomalies, that's a failure for him. We don't go into that enough. But if you really, really did, and you leaned into how burdened he feels and why he's reacting to this child the way that he's reacting to it, because a child is uncontrollable too. You cannot control what happens to your child no matter what you do. You can't control childbirth however much you think you can. So watching him wring his hands to try to predict the unpredictable while being burdened by something that happened to everybody, if you really leaned into that, it would actually make sense that Sue was trying to keep the team together, and that it's not necessarily a girl boss. Their leader is suffering and a broken shell of himself. And now if we just work that dynamic the way that it should, and we don't cut it all out, now you might actually see Reed Richards come around and take over the team and get over his mental health issues or whatever. And to me, that's just so much more important. And that makes whatever happens in the end so much more thrilling. Like I understand you spend too much time on the internet and you think that Twitter should be writing movies. They shouldn't, unless you're writing Eddington. That's the only way that works.
Or that the crowd you're parlaying to is starting to shrink now. Sure. It really is. And so but now you're starting to do what the Snyderverse movie did, or now it's starting to become a cult love of the girl boss stuff. Versus now we're all like, we're tired of it.
Yes,
and that's
fine, and that's fine. But like, if you do it right, it won't feel that way. Like Sue can lead the team as long as you're doing the character development correctly. And if
you just let the Thunderbolts, like it's not a
exactly
not a societal issue, like when it's done right, it's done right.
Right. And if you start Reed Richards as a broken man and then you put him back together by the end, it honestly doesn't matter how much screen time you give Sue, because the story is now about Reed Richards becoming the person that he's supposed to be. And that to me is just really interesting. That's a much better dynamic.
I don't know if Reed ever gets to a place of self-actualization for me in this movie. No. In fact, Sue, I think, is probably the only one who reaches self-actualization. And y'all can hold the camera on her lifeless body as long as you want. I know that girl's gonna pop back up. I know. we can move on. You want to cut some minutes off, stop holding on to and just bring her back to life. I know that's what's gonna happen.
Yeah, also, the more you show this creepy CGI baby, the less I'm believing the tension, because move over, Renesmee. You got yourself a new creepy enemy.
So we're bouncing back and forth between Thunderbolts and Fantastic Four, which makes sense. They both are the newest Marvel movies that have come out. And I want to address expectations, I guess, and the connective tissue that really threw off me watching this movie, because at the end of Thunderbolts, we have a mid-credit scene that shows the Fantastic Four spaceship. Yes, Derrick, laugh at me. That's fine. I absolutely hate this.
No, this is
I
phenomenal.
I
love
it too.
Yes, so they have a mid-credit scene where they show the Fantastic Four ship, and so you leave Thunderbolts thinking Fantastic Four is the next movie. This must connect to that movie. And I can't tell you how much time I spent in the movie trying to connect dots to that post-credit scene. And again, spoiler alert, it never happens in this movie. Now, maybe you guys have bigger plans for that post-credit scene sometime down the line. But you know how much you fucked up my expectations with that mid-credit scene. Like, there are at least 3 different times in this movie that could have led to that. And Derrick kind of alluded to that when we were talking about how they could have ended this movie. But even when it came to taking the fight to Galactus, and now we're talking about jump to anywhere, it doesn't matter, we just need to get out of here. Like, the post-credit scene or the mid-credit scene of Thunderbolts. We're getting there, right? Oh, no? Okay.
Which is fine. I think you're overcritical. This is
That's not
point.
Overcritical. I've seen this come up on reels. Like, I doom scroll sometimes, and there are people who point this out. You see the mid-credit scene, and that I started this off with expectations. I think that mid-credit scene set an expectation that made me look for those dots in this movie. Right. I would not have thought twice about, like, how is this connected to Thunderbolts if that fucking mid-credit scene wasn't there.
Well,
I wouldn't be trying to make any kind of corrections to it, because as we kind of talk about some good things, I actually think that whole sequence with the black hole, even though it's very similar to Superman, I actually think that whole sequence
minus the Minecraft river.
Yeah, right. That whole sequence with the black hole and Shalaval chasing them, and that whole having a baby on board, like, that whole sequence is absolutely thrilling, and I actually think it's the best the movie looks when it comes to their CGI. I think production design is probably the best part of this movie for me. Like, the practical effects that they're creating and the sets and those types of things, I think, are brilliant. But this is where the CGI really thrives. I think it looks amazing, and it's thrilling, and I was invested in what was happening, but I wasn't as invested because you already alluded to something. You set the expectation. I didn't do that. I would have never thought that there could be a different way that this black hole thing could have gone if you hadn't alluded to the fact that there is a different way that this could have gone. I'm not going to write stories just because I want my fan fiction. Like, you gave me the premise and you gave me the jumping off point, and then you sent me into the movie that this is apparently supposed to happen in. But now I got to wait for something else that's not, to me, that's just not how this should be. Like,
Shawn, do you feel that way?
Yeah, Shawn.
Do you feel negative about, because what I'm hearing is that Derrick and Thomas looked at the best thing Marvel has made in years as far as a sequence in a movie, and did not feel that it was as awesome as it was because they were expecting something to tie it in from Thunderbolts. Do you feel that way?
I do agree with Thomas that they set up those expectations for us, and that's on them. If that moment of that scene where we see the spaceship isn't in the movie, you wouldn't have tried connecting those dots during Fantastic Four. The problem is that Derrick knows this, because when we were talking about Captain America, it was like a big thing with us where I'm a very optimistic person, and despite Marvel's faults, I'm really trying to be like, okay, there's something that we just haven't seen yet. And when we see Doomsday, we'll see the connection and it will all work itself out. Whether or not that will be what happens, I mean, it will, because they're all going to work with each other and we'll see what happens. Whether or not it works out the way that we wanted to, or is like the best way for the storytelling, yet to be seen at this point. But yeah, I mean, a part of me definitely was a bit unsatisfied walking out of Fantastic Four, being like, I just wish we gotten a bit more of a connection, because we're really supposed to feel like we're going to see these teams work together in Doomsday, which is coming up very quickly. And I just don't feel that yet, because all we have right now is that the Fantastic Four somehow ends up in their universe. And yes, we don't want or need all the answers right now, but just like a tease to make us excited and ask questions of why this is happening and what's going on, it would be nice to have. And we did get that with the Thunderbolts mid-credit scene, but maybe just something else. And I know that's greedy, but
make it make sense, Shawn. Make it make sense. That's all I'm asking.
You know, here's what I would like, and we've talked about this before, Derrick, because Ryan Coogler went in, made Black Panther, and came out a better filmmaker than Marvel could have ever asked for. And
same thing happened with this movie, by the way.
And he took the best of what he did in Marvel and took it to his own film, Sinners, and made a mid-credit scene that no Marvel mid-credit scene can touch. And that's now what I want from mid-credit scenes. I don't want teases anymore. Derrick gave us a hypothetical of like how this scenario could have gone, where the mid-credit scene is a epilogue. It's an ending, right? Which is what Coogler did in Sinners. That's what I want. You already told us that Robert Downey Jr. is going to be Doomsday in this desperate attempt to make, what was it, Comic-Con more exciting. You spoiled a really great reveal. So I didn't need this mid-credit scene in Fantastic Four. Just didn't need it. And you tied that into the fact that the mid-credit scene of Thunderbolts is about the movie that doesn't reference that mid-credit scene, and I'm just like, stop it. Stop doing mid-credit scenes, guys. You've lost the art. It's not working for me. I would much happier with both films without either of those scenes.
So I think that's where they're okay to lose you, because you're falling out of their demographic.
But it's their fault. I didn't tell them to put the mid-credit scenes. You know?
I understand that,
and I would legitimately not be upset if we got to the end of the movie and it just went to credits and it's like, oh, okay, no mid-credit scene, great, move on with life. Like, I would
it's
not.
Already such a contained movie. You don't have to. It's the first. I'll give it.
It is a very contained movie.
I'll give it a huge compliment right now. One of its greatest strengths is that you do, outside of this mid-credit scene, you do not have to have watched any of the Marvel movies before this. We're on 40, right? You do not have to watch anything. You can waltz right into Fantastic Four and watch that movie from beginning to end. However you feel about it afterwards doesn't matter, but you can just watch it, and that's its strength. So its connective tissue is actually the thing that hurts it the most, because it is so contained. It's just by itself, and we used to do that all the time, and it was great.
I know. I'm sorry, Derrick. Just to mention this really quick, I thought this is what the multiverse was supposed to accomplish. When we got past Endgame and we get to the multiverse and we introduce the multiverse, I thought this is what we were able to do. We can have branches of the multiverse. We can have different Earths, and you can create self-contained stories in other branches of the multiverse. But you can have the main line that, you know, Loki and the TVA can, like, you know, navigate, and you can have self-contained stories. This was the purpose of the multiverse, I thought. But, you know, I guess Feige just didn't get that assignment.
Well, they just did it in What If, because you can't really do it the way that they were trying to follow the narrative in the way. So they did it via cartoon. And
Shawn,
that's right. That's
Shawn,
what I mean.
Tell me more about your thoughts on What If.
What If is one of Marvel's biggest fumbles, disappointments, whatever you want to call it.
The first season was good.
The first season was excellent.
Where it became a Marvel movie where everything has to come together and we have to be a one shared universe. But there was so much potential, and people were so excited when that was announced because there were infinite possibilities. But by the time the show ended, if you even knew it ended because it had fallen off relevancy immediately, it was just a big blob of nothing. It just a bunch of stories that either didn't matter or tried so hard to connect to other things or stuff that you were familiar with. And that's not even the point of this conversation, but like,
It matters. It matters to your overall larger point of you have the potential, you know how to do this, and you're not doing it. And that's where that frustration is coming from, where it's like you have it, you've got it in your hand. What If is an excellent anthology show. This should be right in line with shit like Black Mirror and Love, Death, and Robots, like, but with Marvel characters. That's what we get. We get to just explore the multiverse and see Thanos is a good guy and T'Challa Star-Lord, and we're asking the question, what if this happened? I don't give a shit how it connects to the larger thing. That doesn't matter to me. We just get to experience the craziest things that you can put together. Like, what if Ultron got the Infinity Gauntlet? Holy shit, like, that's crazy. What if the whole world got taken over by zombies? Okay, like, I don't care if you solve that problem, because that's not the point of What If. What If is an anthology show, and then as soon as they were like, this is great, you know what we should do? We should just make little bit Marvel movies and just make them little mini series and then start connecting them all. And it's like, nope, I'm out. Like, your connective tissue continues to be the worst part of everything that you do. And that's where I get off the train.
So I hear you. I know that there was a lot of criticism on the Doom post-credit scene or mid-credit scene, because they literally did it just to drum up interest in Fantastic Four, because they had, or what they felt they had, because by the time Thunderbolts came out, this movie was done, essentially. And so what they thought they had was, I need to show Dr. Doom. We're still on the track that we need to show Robert Downey Jr. in order for any movie to be successful moving on right now, because they were down in the dumps right now. I think that once all the positivity started drum beaten from Thunderbolts, you're right. They probably could have gone back, done something to where maybe they do throw the ship, maybe even they just start getting on the ship and, they do something where they zoop and then you flash to the Thunderbolts characters like, what the fuck is that? And then it's like, you just need a couple people looking up to be like, oh, fuck, here we are, and it's like, okay, I get you there. They didn't need to show Doom there. But at the same time, again, I talk about my daughter, which is really the demographic here. The second she saw Doom in that thing, she went nuts, because it's the only time we see him in the entire movie, and he was teased throughout the entire time. And so it serviced its singular movie theme without needing to kind of tie everything in together. But I get, Thomas, what you're saying is, then don't give me the post-credit scene at Thunderbolts if you aren't going to give me something that kind of juices me in again at Fantastic Four. And I get that. We've been talking about a lot of,
or you could do that. You don't even have to show the ship take off. You know what a better post-credit scene is? Aside from the one that I don't even get paid by Marvel, guys. But aside from the one that I already gave you, you could do two stingers, right? That could be your your true end credit stinger of Silver Surfer saving Johnny Storm and carrying him back to Earth. And then you have the Fantastic Four in your mid-credit scene. You have the Fantastic Four. You can do a whole car seat thing on a spaceship. Do the whole car seat thing of them trying to take their son into space because they think that it's good. And guess where they're going to travel to? Because Reed Richards has solved the problem of multiverse travel, and they are going to boldly go where no man has gone before. And now we know, we don't even need to see them take off. We just need to see them prepare for it. And we know that Reed Richards has fucked up again, and he's going to end up in the wrong place. And like, that's
kind of what I said. That's what I'm saying.
That's cool.
No, you're right.
Like,
we've talked a lot about the negatives of this. I'd really like to start moving the conversant to the positives, though, because there were some good positives.
This is all Shawn and Matt. We'll just let Shawn and Matt do this.
Yeah, Matt. I will say, just to end that part, I hope, I do hope that there comes a point in a future movie where what we're saying now is irrelevant. Maybe there is a plan that we just can't see and that hasn't come up yet. And and maybe there is a really
great way to
cool
be
way that all
optimistic
of
for
this
once. Yeah,
works.
appreciate it.
I do want that. I'm just looking at the view I have right now, and it's a little shrouded and a little confusing and a little frustrating. And so I would love to come back on at some point and say, "Oh, I get what they did now." I
It'll
I
be a
don't think
year, and a
think
half, and you will.
I don't think they're creative enough for that right now, but I hope that they are. That's where I'm at. So positive things. Let's go to some positive things before we take off here.
What I would like to do, though, is I'd like to go into the positive things, and then I'd like to end with the negatives on the ending, just to button back to the negatives, because I'd really like to hear the criticalness of Derrick, because the ending is where all of that critique should come from, because until we get there, it was really great. But Shawn, let's talk about how great it was all the way up until the ending.
Yeah. I personally loved the design of Galactus and everything with him personally. The bar was in absolute hell after Rise of the Silver Surfer, where Galactus was a cloud. So just seeing Galactus in a human form was enough for me. But even the first time, even the first time they walk up to Galactus and you see a full scale of his body, it was incredible. I'm sorry. I loved that shot where they're looking up at him and you see Galactus fully for the first time. I was like, holy crap. Like, it looks amazing.
Did you see it in IMAX?
Yeah.
I have no idea how they cropped that shot for a regular screen. I don't know who else saw it not in IMAX, but
I saw it. It looks fine.
Yeah,
it looks fine. It's good. It's the way that you guys are describing it, though. I don't want to see this movie again so soon, and I'm not paying for an IMAX ticket to see it. But I believe you that there is a true epicness of just the scale that we were talking about earlier, right?
Yeah.
That scale of Galactus, you do feel that scale and the largeness and the impending doom of that recreation. Yeah.
Yeah. And even when Galactus gets to their planet and is walking around and destruction is going on, it was just a lot of fun for me. I just hadn't seen an action sequence like that before in a Marvel movie, so it was just a lot of fun seeing them use their powers individually and him just walking and terrorizing everything. I mean, like, specifically like that kind of action, if that makes sense. So I was just having a lot of fun with Galactus, and I could have watched that for hours and hours. I also loved Silver Surfer, and when she first got to the Earth and was giving that speech, Herald, like, that was awesome. And like we talked about, there was, there's a lot of family drama stuff that was left out of this movie, but when it was there, it was very interesting. And I just wish they gave more of that, because what we got felt a bit flat compared to what could have been. But I like their dynamic. I see the potential. I'm excited to see where they go in the future with these characters and the characters they're going to interact with. So it just makes me a bit hopeful, because I am starting to care about these characters. I'm excited to see more of them, and I hope to see more. So
Thomas, what did you like that was good?
Yeah, let me tell you, the thing that I think both Derrick and I will probably share are maybe our favorite parts of the film. I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong. But the production design is immaculate. Yeah. It's gorgeous. Just how immersive this movie is. I'm shocked they haven't broken ground at like Epcot or Disney World or wherever their superheroes are. I'm shocked they haven't broken ground on a Fantastic Four land, because I think at this point I would you don't make another movie, just make a theme park land, and I'm so there, right? Everything about how the production design is, the branding, the it's so just so immersive. Even with IMAX, so Shawn, you probably saw it, they had the IMAX countdown in the Fantastic Four theme, and that was just so cool. That in combination with the awesome score, like, this is a world I would love to be immersed in, and was immersed in. In fact, I kind of hate that this was a global movie, because every time they cut to places that wasn't New York, I'm like, it's not nearly as cool as it's New York, but yeah, I think, the production design is great here.
For me,
go ahead and build the theme park now. I'll be there.
I love that concept too, because for me, I felt very much that I was a little nervous that this movie was not going to put me in the 1960s. Like the way I felt when the movie first starts, I'm like, oh wow, like we're here. Okay, cool. They're showing us like raggedy film of film that they have. You could feel that it feels old, at least. You know, from the talk show guy, you know, I forget, it's supposed to like mirror, like in America they use ABC, you know, it's like an old ABC. Wheaties, you know, like the old Lucky Charms box, you know, like everything about their costumes, or their yeah, I guess costumes, you could say, like the colors, the vibrance, it seems just very old. And then it like kind of ties you in with like some of this new age stuff that you would only have because Reed Richards is Reed Richards, like Herbie, you know, and these like, you know, cool sciencey stuff that looks old. And this is what I really loved about the TVA. The TVA had a very similar thing where it's like when you got popped into the TVA, you had like rounded TV sets and stuff like that, where you felt like, okay, this must be like not in a futuristic world, but maybe just a more high-tech version of back in the day.
It's the same production designer, by the way.
Yeah,
oh, well, that makes so much sense.
It's the same production designer. Yeah.
Give them a raise and put them on every project.
It was intentional. It was intentional.
Yeah.
And then also, it's like this movie was just okay. Let's say Kevin Feige had this concept for this Fantastic Four movie for a while. Like, hey, we're gonna do this 1960s. Like Matt Shackman doing WandaVision. It's like, you could tell it's like, dude, we're going to tee this up for you. Okay. We're going to put you right back into this type of concept, these type of sets and stuff, and just kind of let you play within them, because I thought it was beautiful. And the vibrance of the characters and the colors and everything just really put me there. And then it also allowed me to feel the darkness of Galactus once you got there. For me, unfortunately, the CGI was a little muddled, so it was almost a little too dark, but I get why they were doing that, or why it went this way. But for me, it just was like, okay, now I'm starting to understand like the grasp of differential here between these two characters and how different that these sets and everything can be. But it's hard not to talk about the positivity of the space chase, you know, from Galactus all the way back to Earth for that 20 minutes of time or whatever was the biggest thing that Marvel has done. Some people are saying ever. I mean, I'm not going to ride off on that horse, but visually, Silver Surfer was riding the waves like a real surfer. You know, when they were getting close to the black hole, when the ship was shaking, you know, and everything about it just felt like, oh wow, like we're really here. And what I really loved about Reed Richards' character, because he had been subtle this entire time, and so like this is part of where it worked for me, was Reed was calm the entire time. The rest of the Fantastic Four, Sue's giving birth, you know, Johnny and Ben Grimm. Ben Grimm's trying to fly the thing and get him out of here. They're all waiting. And yet Reed Richards, calm, because he knows he can rely on his mind to science his way out of it, and the math will math. And that's kind of the concept I felt from it, where it was like, wow, I'm really seeing this character not worry about it. Even though there's so much going on, he knows I'm going to be able to figure this out. And what's really cool about the comics, just to give a little backstory, is Reed Richards has the ability to turn his mind into a supercomputer at any time. Like, so you could tell during some of these parts where he is absolutely locked into supercomputer mode, where it's like, I got to figure this out, but I don't need to be emotional about it. You know, and that's some things about science that you love, is we're not getting attached to this. It's science. We're dissecting a frog. It's not an animal. It's for science, you know? And so that I really loved. I also really loved Reed Richards' you know, like when he's you see his chalkboard and it's like angled up at the ends because he can reach his arm to right up there. And then also these little small things, like during the birth, he's sitting there holding Sue, but he's kind of focused on everything going, but at that time he still stretches his arm to kind of lock everybody in. It was like, wow, some of these subtleties in this, people were really paying attention, wanting to make this movie great. And then the last thing I'll say, Johnny Storm was freaking awesome, man. I was worried that some of the CGI would take over here. And did it not feel to you guys like these were real flames? Like that part where it went super dark and he's like, Johnny, give me a little bit. And he's,
cool.
And it was like, whoa, it didn't come at you like it was fake. I felt very real about it. And something I was actually taken back by was when Johnny's flying, the third person film and scale of it, I actually preferred more than Superman. And I thought I wasn't going to, because I thought, okay, we're going to get two flying characters. And I really liked Superman, but dang, Johnny Storm flying through the city, man, the way they had that and the way the flames looked real. And I was like, wow, they really nailed this. Like, that was great. Love to get into the negatives though.
Derrick, was there anything else positive you wanted to say?
I'll do a quick positive, because I know we've been talking about this movie about as long as the movie is. That's
okay, people love it. We're a long form.
Right. Well, I have another podcast I got to get to. So, okay, so I agree. Production design, just gorgeous. I think it actually makes up for any of the wonky CGI that I do think is noticeable. I think there's a couple of places where it's. I mentioned that super creepy CGI baby, and babies are already weird to me, and so between this and Twilight, I'm just like, Jesus, please don't ever let these babies meet, because this is the stuff of nightmares.
To pop in on the baby thing real quick, the one at the end, yes, I could get that one. There's a lot more of the baby, but I'll tell you what, the most egregious part of the CGI baby was when it was born and the hand came up. It was like, that ain't it. That ain't it. I'll tell you what, that's not it. You should go back. People need to be saying, how can you be a multi-million billion-dollar company and be like, yeah, we're gonna go with that? It's like, no, don't do that. Anyway.
So production design, just absolutely gorgeous. Whenever they're doing practical effects and just the whole retro-futuristic 1960s almost Jetson style of production, gorgeous. I loved the score. I think Michael Giacchino's score is just soaring, and it does make you feel like you can fly with Johnny Storm in the way that it does. It's just brilliant score work. I do think that most of the cast does a pretty good job. I think we've already kind of talked about how they're hamstrung by their characters, but when they are given a little bit of room to breathe, you can tell that each one of them is definitely game. And even the Pedro Pascal of it all, we can go on and on about how overexposed he might be, but like, he's overexposed because he's pretty good. I think he's slightly miscast here, but there are times where you see his talent match what is actually going on with Reed Richards. And while he's not really able to do that as often as we would like, there are plenty of times, like the scene that you're talking about, Matt, where the real character of Reed Richards, even broken and being a leader, those come out the most. He's the most pronounced and the most developed in that scene, and I think it's phenomenal. So I think overall the cast is really great. I do think that I like the Silver Surfer. I wish she was used a little bit more. I actually really enjoyed the relationship between her and Johnny Storm, even though it's only explored on the surface level. There was enough there that made me feel like, wow, I want to see more of this. There's certainly a connection going on here, and I like what they're doing. So I liked all of those things. I think those things are definitely positives. And the last thing I'll say is, like, as critical as I am, and a lot of this has just been the reflection that I've had as I've been able to kind of sit with the movie, have some of those things bounce around in my brain. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you. Like, I left the theater feeling very satisfied. I genuinely left the theater doing the Fantastic Four. Like, I was pumped. And so those issues just became more and more pronounced the longer I was able to kind of be away from it. And so I don't think I'm going to be as fond of it when I revisit it. But I will tell you that in the moment, it's very easy to walk away from this movie and feel like you saw something great. And I know we had kind of talked about some of those illusions, and there's the illusions of stakes. And I think some of those things, some of those negatives that we've talked about, I think those things do kind of start to overtake some of those positives. But it's perfectly fine to walk away from this movie on a high. I did as well, but the come down is where it kind of brought me back to reality. And there's just some things that I just couldn't get over. But they do a lot of things well, and I actually think most of my frustrations with the movie is that they just don't do them enough. That's really where I think a lot of my of holding the movie back is. It has all this potential, and it starts to take a couple of steps to get there. But again, those Marvel arms just wrap them around, bring them back behind the line, and don't let them really explore the things that they should. But
and I would button that real quick. The miscast part about Pedro Pascal, definitely. It's also with Johnny Storm, but Vanessa Kirby and Ben Grimm, the thing, like they were dead on.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, and I think I have to. All of the issues that I have with the casting is actually more with the writing, or maybe the edit, or whatever material they're working with. Because I would have liked to have loved all of these characters and their development. I don't think that they. I didn't see anything wrong with the performances. I think that the performances suffered from the lack of development in the story or in the writing or those things. So
all right, and end with the negative, I guess, huh?
No, we don't. We don't have to. I mean, I think
we've gotten them out, but
I think specifically at the ending there was.
Oh, we're talking about the ending. Yeah,
well,
let's do that real quick.
It was the most egregious part of the film. That's the reason why you could potentially leave the theater and feel like you weren't pumped. Like, what you set me up for 70% of this movie, 75% of this movie was fantastic. And then the last 25% was the stuff you're left on. It's just like when you sing Amazing Grace and then the very last note, you can't hit it. It's like, that's what I remember. I don't remember that you sang the rest of it beautifully. Shawn, do you feel that way?
No,
do you feel that the ending?
I'm trying to think of how Amazing Grace goes.
I just, you got what I was saying with that. I don't know how.
No, I just, how does Amazing Grace end? I don't remember.
You know what? If you want a more clear cut analogy, if you can't remember that song, the national anthem also works.
Okay. That's maybe I meant that. Anyway.
Thank you.
No, I completely agree with with what you said about the ending is what you remember. I think people that crap on WandaVision crap on it because of the last 2 episodes, and what Thomas was saying before, we're up to episode 6. It was a fantastic show, but some people only remember those last 2 episodes and how it became a Marvel project that is like every other project they had seen before. And I was having a lot of fun with the build up to this movie, to the 3rd act and everything. And then, yes, it becomes a CGI fight and everything. And maybe people would have liked to have seen a different type of ending where Galactus did eat the world and it wasn't what they wanted, or the mid-credits scene where it left a bad taste in people's mouths because of Doom and everything. I like looking at the movie as a whole and what I liked and didn't like. But I mean, the ending didn't like make me that mad, but I do agree with what we said before about Sue Storm dying. It was that, and then also the entire time she was laying there, I was just picturing Vanessa Kirby's name on that chair during the announcement. I'm like, you can't fool me with it, like why? Like, that's all I saw.
Marvel spoiling their own movies.
I just like.
I mean, it went very cliche at the end, where you're like, oh,
yeah. Sorry, go ahead and finish up, Shawn.
No, I think that was all I had to say. Really,
yeah, that's so funny. I think my most egregious, perspective on the ending is probably obviously there's the cliches with the climax and Sue dying and coming back to life and all that stuff. I loved the car seat segment. That was kind of a fun note, and I kind of wish the movie had a lot more of that comedy, because I think that was a perfect like illustration of like,
you would have been critical
dynamic
of it being too much if it had more of
I don't know, maybe not, I don't know, but
I feel like it did have more, and that's what started to get cut out.
Maybe but it's the very last shot, like the very, very last shot before credits, where they got the car seat in and the car takes off, and I'm like, oh, okay, that was a very like not glamorous way to end the movie. Like, shouldn't we have something a little bit more grand or a little more like, rousing. Like, I don't know. Like, I feel like this score, this movie, like there's enough scope to it that we could have had like a really cool like final shot of where they're going. But it just kind of like takes off and goes behind the building, and it's like credits. And I think that maybe that the final shot, maybe this is just the critic in me, but I go to film festivals and definitely like judge movies on their final shot a lot. And so that I think that's
because I love this. This is all I wanted from you guys.
Right.
Because
Yeah.
you're very critical of Superman because of some of these things, and you cannot let this go.
Yeah, no, the ending is definitely problematic, and I mean, like I said, there are very obvious problems with it, but for me, I think the niche thing is like that last shot could have been a little more spectacular. I don't know.
Derrick?
I'll just kind of echo a lot of what you guys said. I agree. I think again, for me, it's whenever Marvel becomes a product and it starts to operate like a product is when things get lost for me. And I think the most egregious part of the movie is the ending, which feels like a Marvel product. It doesn't feel like the movie we were led to believe it was going to be. To your point, and like we talked about, Thomas, I like the family drama stuff. All that family drama stuff is way more interesting than the last 25 minutes of, all right, guys, we got to have a big CGI fight in the middle of a city. And it's like, guys, you're 40 films in. We have seen this 40 fucking times. How many times do we need to see a giant monster in the middle of a city destroying buildings?
And that's 40 times just in the Marvel universe. That's not including all of what DC does, which is exactly the same. You know.
and I'm not saying that like we can't fight Galactus. I understand why Galactus is the villain that he is, and I get that you're going to have challenges with that, but I do think that is the weakest part of the movie. I think the ending is where things really kind of start to fall apart a little bit. And, to Matt's point and everything we've kind of talked about, the things that we really liked do feel like they've been cut to pieces. And it feels like they just don't go all the way. We talked about Johnny Storm and his character and his relationship with Shaw Ball. Like that was clearly cut down. Ben Grimm has a girlfriend, guys. I don't know if you know, but
away from Natasha Lyonne. I'm sorry.
Right? Like, dude, what are you doing? Who cast Natasha Lyonne as like, okay, say 2 lines and then get the hell out of my shot? What?
There was so much more.
Right? Like there's
completely removed. Like
yes, there's a whole movie there. There's a whole movie. And again, it speaks back to we're not worried about Ben Grimm worrying about himself feeling like the Thing and being a rock. He has accepted the fact that this is how he looks. So now he's just a lonely guy that wants to connect with somebody and wants to have something that his best friend has, which is this love and this family. That's what he wants. And that's reflected only kind of, but we see Natasha Lyonne's character twice. And you can tell that she clearly had a bigger role. They clearly had more interactions. And that's something that's important to the growth of the Thing, the growth of Ben Grimm. And they just cut it down. We talked about the crisis of Reed Richards and him being a burdened man and holding all of this guilt. And it's only kind of explored and it's only kind of shown to us. And so I think that's where this movie really falters. So then for it to give us these things where we're like, hey, go back to that. That's really interesting. But you just hit fast forward and you rush to get to the same 25 minutes we've seen countless times. It does bring the movie down. It really does spoil some of that goodwill. So
in fairness of time, I will rattle these off quickly. You cannot let this story go by without being chastised. This is an incredibly bad story. Like just if you watch it, it works for a film. It definitely, but it's a very bad story. Shah LaBeouf, they only used the girl Silver Surfer just because they needed to have a love interest for Johnny Storm. I mean, that's to me weak.
I think they were just plagiarizing Rise of the Silver Surfer. Really,
it's the same story.
It's literally the same story.
It's just weak. It's weak. They they gave Pedro Pascal nothing to do. He's burdened the entire movie. The better movie would have been him in the end finding a way to grasp the concept that he needed to be a little bit more filled with emotion, or to have his story arc pull through. That was the right ending to have in this movie to really take us forward. There's not enough of like we mentioned with him. There could have been so much more. The character between him and Ben Grimm, they're best friends. He's burdened by the fact that he caused his buddy to look like a damn rock for the rest of his life. So much so that he spends his entire life trying to figure out in the comics how to get him back to human form. You have none of that in this movie, which doesn't give Ben Grimm a character arc at all.
Ben Grimm is the least developed. Like
you
can
tell his
such
story
an
got
afterthought.
Yeah. We weren't talking about Johnny Storm not having anything to do. Ben is just waiting to punch something once. Like, that's it. That's his whole arc.
Galactus, you actually didn't make look like a credible threat at all. At all, because when you think about it, him coming to Earth and all this stuff, wait a second, he's supposed to be this planet devouring thing, but yet Sue Storm can hold him back alone and push him back. I get it that you're trying to tell me that she's a mother and she's going to give her life up for her kid, and that's going to be enough, but it isn't. It's not enough. That's why he's a Fantastic Four villain.
Side note, I know Matt's trying to go for time, but I just have to mention this because he brought it up. Wow, take your time, Galactus. Like, what you have a Herald that can follow people going the speed of light, and it's gonna take you nine months to get to Earth. Like, what the fuck are we doing here?
The sense of time in this movie is so problematic for me. I'm trying not to think about it too much, but of course I can't think about being next to a black hole without thinking about Interstellar and how much time
they said they at least acknowledged that. So that is what I liked about it. I think
about that, and then I think about how it takes a matter of days for him to get to Jupiter, and the newscast says, and Galactus is now approaching Jupiter, and we're like, okay, so he's almost there. But 3 months later, they're still building these towers, and now he's passing Mars.
The moon now, guys.
He's passing the moon.
You could easily send the Silver Surfer to destruct everything that she did at the very end. She could have done that long time ago. She could have been there just camping out. There was so much of this story that was actually bad. And then the other thing about the baby, it's like, dude, this baby was just born. Like, all you told me was that Silver Surfer is going to receive a 30-day time dilation because of how close you were to the black hole. Yet the baby's like 1 year old when you're back on Earth, and it's able to like nuzzle its mom and like clap. Like, bro, this baby was born 30 days ago. This guy's just pooping. That's all he's doing. And so it's just like unforgivably bad only when we get to the end. And I could have forgave a lot of it if Sue Storm died. I could have forgave it because then you really think she's dead. So then she must have gave her entire life force from some unknown, dimension, wherever their powers came from, right? To like save or to actually ward off Galactus. And it's like, okay, that makes sense because she's dead. Well, no, she ain't dead. So it didn't. The last thing that I will talk about that I just hated, Galactus barely steps foot or right to the line where he knows he's going to get sucked into a black hole. Then he looks down at the guys and be like, haha, you're smart, but doesn't kick it to destroy it right there.
Matt, shut up.
Like, he knows this is a problem. Like, let me just, because I'm Galactus, I'm going to break it right now so that I don't have to worry about it in freaking, you know what I mean? And it's just like, dude, some of this stuff, it's like,
that's funny. Fair, I didn't even think about that.
I didn't either.
Now that's all I can think about.
I think what happened is that he looks down and he realizes the baby isn't there. I don't know why he won't pick up that this is a portal, because Silver Surfer destroyed all the other portals, so this should be known information. But yeah, he looks down, he sees the baby isn't there, and looks over and is actually over in the tower and says, "You're smart," which actually isn't that smart. It's just the plan that they had. But you're right. Like, oh yes, this thing is here. I don't know why, but I'm going to step almost to it and then divert myself and not destroy it. That's actually
it's
so
egregious.
funny.
It's so egregious that you start to really lose hope for the film. I do believe it's going to settle on Rotten Tomatoes under Superman, which will kind of, even though the money of the movie won't, it will kind of help Superman a little bit as far as that goes. But I just thought, man, this movie could have been one of the best, if not the best. I mean, you had a chance to really do something great with this movie. You had about 30 to 45 minutes of pure greatness. There was clearly more that got cut out of there where, man, we really had a shot here. But it seems like a lot of the fandom are getting behind this movie, and they want Marvel to reboot within this universe. Like, they want this Fantastic Four cast, this world, this New York City, these people to do it. My last thing that I want to say is the stuff they did with Doctor Doom was honestly fantastic. The fact that Latveria's guy is not in the World Leader Conference.
That was good.
All of
You'd have
it,
just
I was
left
like,
it at that. That would have been good.
Yes,
that would have been solid.
That was so good. So in the mid-credit scene, you see it, and there's so much you can infer from it. Is he there to steal Franklin? Is he just there? Why is Sue Storm kind of like alerted, right? And you knew that, at least in the comics, that Reed and Dr. Doom are combatants at college, right? So it's not like this is a foreign Dr. Doom in their house, right? So something happened between Reed and us to get here to where he's the leader of Latveria. Like, all of that stuff are the positives for me that you guys are tearing down as far as it not connecting, because I want to see how it connects. You're right, though. Who knows if they're going to make it there, but I believe in it. You know, I'm a fan, and will continue to watch these as fans. I thought it was a good movie, but it's like a 7.8.
Mm-hmm.
It's under
Shawn,
Superman.
Shawn, do you want to get under Superman? Okay, 7 or 8 from Matt. Shawn, do you want to give a quick rating?
Yeah, 8 out of 10. I had a lot of fun with it. Obviously, had my issues that we talked about, but again, I enjoyed it, and it makes me excited for what we're gonna see next.
Nice, Derrick. Really quick, you want to give a rating?
I'm on a good day, I'm a 7. On a bad day, it's about a 6.56.
Oh man, that is so much lower.
That's on a bad day, though. That's on a bad day. My official Rotten Tomatoes critic rating is 3.5 out of 5. So 7 out of 10. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I might be at a 6.25.
Wow.
Right? Like,
that just means the ending is that egregious.
I think
I got some other issues with it too, but yes,
I think that there's, Matt makes a valid point. I'll say this and we'll sign off. I think endings can make or break a movie. And I think, I don't know if it necessarily broke this movie for me.
Almost broke the movie.
Almost, maybe. I guess I had my suspension of disbelief up high enough that I did not catch the fact he didn't break the portal.
He knew it.
That's never leaving my brain now. That's never gonna leave my brain now. He could have just looked down at it, blasted it, and then walked away. And then that's it. Like, we're doomed.
It was the last portal. It was the only way he could have been defeated.
Yeah.
You know, it's like,
that's a good point.
Only way. So,
but like, I think that it would take rewatching the movie and feeling favorably about it to kind of I feel like my rating is kind of buoyant with like, how recently have I watched it, you know? So yeah, I'm at like a 6.25, something like that. So
the reason why mine and Shawn's are up is because we're the optimistic fans of Marvel,
you know, and I love the that
criticism to not
I love
be
it for
dropped.
You guys too. We need them.
I love that for you guys.
We need them.
The world needs viewers like you guys, and you know,
the world needs people that are gonna go see Avengers Doomsday. Because I gotta be honest, unless I get assigned, it's probably not gonna be me.
We'll go ahead and wrap up. Derrick, Shawn, Matt, thanks so much for joining this podcast, and thank you everyone for listening. Tune in next week for ForReel, for this week on ForReel.